Ayakwi Naknamalita, and this is my channel, The Midnight Librarian. Today I will be doing a rapid fire review of Emily Henry. I will be doing a rapid fire review of 3 of Emily Henry's works. This is more of a check-in. There's a couple of authors that I have read a couple of books from, but I haven't actually done full reviews of their books. So this is like just a brief check-in to see, okay, how am I enjoying their works? Do I want to continue on with them? And basically just let you know of just like, I won't be continuing on. There's like 3 categories. I won't be continuing on with them. It's too soon to tell, and basically will be cautiously going forward, continuing reading them, and auto buy. Like, yes, I will read anything from these authors. And so my first one I figured would be Emily Henry. I have read 3 books from her so far, each with varying degrees of what I like and dislike, and ultimately let you know if I will continue reading from her. There's other authors that I have this too from. Some authors I like, I will tell you about them. Robin Wall Kimmerer, I believe I've told you about Stephen Graham Jones, Mira Grant, aka Shauna Maguire. So there's authors that I have read from. I think Mira Grant needs to be taken out of there because ultimately that was all one series. So I'm not quite there yet with Mira Grant, aka Shauna Maguire. I don't know. I'm still figuring this out. Emily Henry is kind of like my guinea pig. So let's go ahead and do that. So the first book that I want to talk about by Emily Henry is Beach Read. I do not have a physical copy of this book, and if you know me, you kind of know that if I enjoy a book, whether I read it audibly or not, I want a physical copy. And typically when a book hits 3 stars is when I start going, do I really want it or not? Beach Read I gave 2 stars, so I didn't want this physical copy. Basically, let me tell you the synopsis of this book. This book is following Augustus Everett and January Andrews. January Andrews is a best-selling romance author. Augustus Everett is an acclaimed author for literary fiction. Her endings are always happy. Augustus Everett always kills off his entire cast. They are polar opposites. They were college rivals. January ends up going up to a lake that is like she has beachfront property because of her dad, and thinks that this will help her get out of her writer's block, only to find out that her beachfront property is neighbors to Augustus Everett. Augustus Everett also has writer's block, so to make things interesting, they decide to switch genres and kind of put a bet on one another of if they switch genres and whoever has the best-selling book, the other has to buy it or something like that. It's been a couple years since I've read this, but ultimately what I remember was that the pacing was really odd. It kind of felt meandery, and ultimately I didn't connect with January. I thought there were times where she was being very unfair to Augustus. Augustus as a character himself I thought was perfectly fine. I actually didn't mind him and felt sorry for him having to deal with January. I did not connect with January. I know that she was going through some things within this book, but ultimately felt that she was taking it out on Augustus, and I felt terrible for him because she was not communicating to the best of her ability, in my opinion. So I remember just like going, I don't understand why people are giving this 5 stars. And from my understanding, like a lot of people have been giving this one 5 stars, or they've been giving book lovers 5 stars. And that's so far my take of just like either people love Beach Read and hate book lovers, or love book lovers and hate Beach Read. And that's kind of where I fall, is that I did not like Beach Read at all. The concept was interesting. There was some banters that I thought were fun, but ultimately did not like January. That kind of leads into Book Lovers by Emily Henry. This is following Nora Stevens, whose life is all about books. She works in publishing, and she is not that type of heroine. Not the plucky one, not the laid-back dream girl, and especially not the sweetheart. In fact, the only people Nora is a heroine for are her clients, for whom she lands enormous deals as a cutthroat literary agent, and her beloved little sister Libby, which is why she agrees to go to Sunshine Falls, North Carolina for the month of August, when Libby begs to go on a sister's trip. With visions of a small town transformation for Nora, who she's convinced needs to become the heroine of her own story, but instead of picnics in meadows and run-ins with a handsome country doctor or bulging four-armed bartender, Nora keeps bumping into Charlie Lastra, a bookish, brooding editor from back in the city. It would be a meet cute if it not for the fact that they've met many times and it's never been cute. If Nora knows she's not an ideal heroine, Charlie knows he's nobody's hero, but as they are thrown together again and again in a series of coincidences no editor worth their salt would allow, that what they discover might just unravel the carefully crafted stories they've written about themselves. This one I absolutely loved. I think it 5 stars. Yeah, I gave it five stars. What I liked about it is that there was no miscommunication issue with Charlie. There was some miscommunication and secrets kept between Libby and Nora, and I have a sister. We're not that close though, so it's like there was that aspect that I wasn't quite sure of. But what I remember, and because I read this again like a year or so ago, was that I felt for Nora when she realized that Libby didn't quite understand her as well as she thought. That she had this image of herself of, you know, she loves the city. She is a different type of girl. She's not going to be that small town girl that guys fall in love with. In fact, she's been left because of those small town girls, because she enjoys her job. She enjoys the city, and she's not the type of girl. She doesn't feel like she's the type of girl that guys are willing to stay with. She's the type of girl that gets left. So she very much has this vision, like image of herself, and she thought that Libby understood that, and Libby doesn't. And of course Libby's keeping secrets from Nora. So Charlie understands her, Nora, and so that relationship I thought was really nice. It felt a little insta-lovey, but I thought it was fairly well paced. But it was ultimately the sister dynamic that I thought was really interesting, and like the fact that Nora was disappointed because someone that she thought was her closest friend doesn't know her, but at the same doesn't know her as well as she thought, as well as that letting go of like she doesn't have to protect her sister as much as she thinks she does. So I thought that was cool. I also thought it was interesting. Like, I love the fact that Nora didn't change at all and that she still found her person. So that's what I ultimately loved about it. And gave this 5 stars. The next one is Emily Henry's most recent work, and that is Happy Place. I also gave this 5 stars. I was really surprised. I was really hesitant to go into this because of the synopsis. Harriet and Wynne have been the perfect couple since they met in college. They go together like salt and pepper, honey and tea, lobster and rolls. Except now, for reasons they are still not discussing. That bit right there had me real hesitant. They don't. They broke up 5 months ago and still haven't told their best friends, which is how they find themselves sharing a bedroom at the main cottage that has been their friend group's yearly getaway for the last decade. Their annual respite from the world, where for one vibrant, blissful week, they leave behind their daily lives, have copious amounts of cheese, wine, and seafood, and soak up the salty coastal air with the people who understand them most. Only this year, Harriet and Wynne are lying through their teeth while trying not to notice how desperately they still want each other. Because the cottage is for sale and this is the last week they'll all have together in this place. They can't stand to break their friends' hearts, and so they'll play their parts. Harriet will be the driven, surgical resident who never starts a fight, and Wynne will be the laid-back charmer who never lets cracks show. It's a flawless plan if you look at it from a great distance and through a pair of sunscreen-smeared sunglasses. So that is one of the reasons why I was hesitant to pick this up. I did end up getting this as an ALC, or Advanced Listeners copy, from Libro FM, so thank you so much to them, and enjoyed it enough that I wanted a physical copy. So as I read the synopsis, and I read the synopsis for my May TBR. This was on my May TBR, and I was very hesitant. I do not like when the I don't typically like the miscommunication trope in romances because they're, in my opinion, never done well. This one was done well, in my opinion. The reason that the pridefulness of these characters and how they assumed the actions and reasons for one another was very well done and complex, and it made sense to me. I listened to this and at work, and which was a bad idea because I was crying every other chapter. I felt for Harriet so much, and that pain, that grief of losing someone that was your best friend and your partner for 7+ years, and the fact that they just left with no explanation over a 4-minute phone call was devastating. And that respect of having to be tortured by playing pretend so as to not upset your friend group, and noticing that he's fine. He seems fine doing this was just terrible. So the complexity of both these characters, of both their reasonings of why they did what they did and held back what they did, and ultimately the main discussion of people change, people's goals change, was amazing. Particularly not just with Harriet and Wynne and their connection, but also with their friend group. This is how their friend group saw them, and that's how they wanted to remain seeing them, only that Harriet and Wynne see themselves differently now than they did back when they were in college, and that was beautiful. And the growth and the like having to let go of who you were, it's just fantastic. Oh my god. This is probably like my favorite book from Emily Henry. So yes, 5 stars. So ultimately I have 2 5 stars from Emily Henry. I'd probably end up lowering this to a 4.5 in all honesty after having read this one. I, however, do not like any of these covers. I'm not the biggest fan of this, I think I've been calling it simplistic illustration. I think that's how it's named. I wouldn't call this necessarily simplistic, because it still takes, I think, some, illustration in and of itself takes work. And so to get an accurate body shape for these characters, I think is something, but it's just not something I'm particularly a fan of. That seems to be all romances now. I don't like Beatrice Reed's cover at all. And his alternate cover was no better. I didn't like it. So I'm a little upset because I don't think Book Lovers was available as a hardcover. So the fact that Happy Place is, which is nice. I like hardcovers, but like the differences now, I mean, I guess it doesn't really matter because it's not a part of the same series or anything, but it just bugs me. So will I continue reading Emily Henry? Yes. I think that her work is getting better and better with every new publication. With that in mind, though, I do have something from her backlist. This was available through Book of the Month back in 2019. I don't know if it's still available or not, but I still have it. But that is When the Sky Fell in Splendor. This is not a romance. I believe this is speculative fiction. This is called... In the synopsis, it's The Serpent King Meets Stranger Things, which I have not read or watched either one of those. Almost everyone in the small town of Splendor, Ohio was affected when the local steel mill exploded. If you weren't a casualty of the accident yourself, chances are a loved one was. That's the case for 17-year-old Franny, who 5 years after the explosion still has to stand by and do nothing as her brother lies in a coma. In the wake of the tragedy, Franny found solace in a group of friends whose experiences mirrored her own. The group calls themselves The Ordinary, and they spend their free time investigating local ghost stories and legends, filling their exploits for their small following of YouTube fans. It's silly, it's fun, and it keeps them from dwelling on the sadness that surrounds them. Until one evening when the strange and dangerous thing they film isn't fiction. It's a bright light, something massive hurling toward them from the sky, and when it crashes, the teens go to investigate. Everything changes. So I'm still intrigued by this one. It's science fiction. I enjoy this cover. I really enjoy it and kind of wish that her newer books have this dynamic. I think it has more depth to it. It has more intrigue. I really just don't like this. And so because I didn't like Beatree, there's this like aspect of it of like, do I just not like her older works, or do I just not like her older romance works? Would I like this one? I have not been interested in her older works, that The Love That Split the World or A Million Junes. I know that A Million Junes was one of Kayla from Books and Lala's favorite, but I honestly, like, her and my reading like book tastes haven't aligned. I don't know, I'm still interested in reading this just because it is not romance. And just to see where this particular genre of hers goes. But yeah, in terms of Emily Henry's romance books, I will definitely be reading, just because I definitely think that as she is, she's getting better and better as she produces more. So that's my review of that, I guess. So that's my review of her last 3 romance books and what I think about how I'm gonna move forward with Emily Henry. If you've read any of these, please let me know your thoughts down below. Otherwise, let's go ahead, if you've made it this far, let's go ahead and put a pink heart. I'm hoping to do more of these. Like I said, there's a couple other authors that I think that would be interesting to do like a little check-in to see if I would be willing to read more of their works. Louise Erdrich comes to mind. Nnedi Okorafor also comes to mind. So there's other folks that I would like to do this for, as I'm realizing that I'm going back to authors. So hopefully you enjoy this. Like I said, if you made it this far, let's go ahead and do a pink heart emoji down in the comments. If you read any of these, let me know your thoughts. If you enjoy this, be sure to give it a like. Subscribe to me if you haven't already and want to see more of me. Otherwise, I hope that you are in the mental mindset to enjoy your reading, and I hope to see you in another video very soon. Ciao.